What is going on, you guys? It's your boy, the professional idiot here, and we're back with episode 35 of my video game therapy series. I figured it was fitting to do one of these after I just deleted the world save where I probably spent at least 40 hours dicking around the world and accidentally deleted the save file when resetting my computer. So I should probably record one or two of these to to make up some ground. But anyway, today I wanted to talk about human innovation. And of course, yes, I'm going to talk about the future and probably freaking AI. So if you're sick of hearing about AI, sorry, but it'll probably come up during my tirade on this. But I don't know. We'll see where this goes. Historically, and this isn't necessarily my novel opinion. I've heard this elsewhere. Historically, humans have had a tendency to, and rightfully so. We haven't really been punished for this, to whatever extent that means. Humans have an interest in innovating, and then dealing with whatever the consequences are later. So we kind of err on the side of, oh, if this is new, technology, we should just develop it and see what happens. And you can see, obviously, I'm like that kind of sounds like I'm even thinking about, oh no, AI is going to kill us all or whatever. I just mean a good example would be the internet. And maybe this comes back to my discussion on should things exist versus could they exist. Certainly there are a lot of things that could exist, but should they? Probably not. And the internet is one thing. I'm not saying it shouldn't exist. Obviously, there's a multitude of benefits that the internet has brought us, but we didn't develop it with any of that in mind. Not to say that we could have had the foresight to have predicted some of the issues that the internet has brought on, but we certainly didn't really hesitate in developing it and publishing it in mass and kind of depending on it and making it what it is today. We haven't really thought twice about a lot of things, and we haven't really been punished in that sense just for innovating, for innovation's sake, and for making something new and dealing with whatever the consequences are. And some might argue that the internet has consequences that outweigh the benefits, right? I think benefits would be the speed at which we can communicate, and to some extent we can learn, and I guess communication is just one of the facets of learning. I guess communication would be I guess the very zeroth layer of learning, really. But that certainly had a lot of consequences socially. I think we've seen, even with the younger generation's difficulty in communicating through normal methods, and some people just are very quick to just accept things as the new, and not really look back, which is not really what I guess actually I'm partially advocating for some time spent reflecting, but some people just think, oh, well, that's the way it is. Get over it. Grow up, and it's it's a new era. You should just if everyone's we use dating apps now. We don't meet people the old-fashioned way. I mean, we even call it the old-fashioned way, which is kind of funny. And to some extent, I mean, there's not a strong argument one could make, other than like, I think it was better before, kind of thing. And I guess there are, depending on what the topic is, you have a stronger argument in one sense more than the other. I think if we're talking about, like, I don't know, dating, people, statistically maybe you could find a better match because now communication is instant and you can just find anyone that lives anywhere that might be a better fit for you. You don't have to settle for, the girl that lives on the block, or whatever your orientation are. It can be a dude. It doesn't matter. I don't care. But and yeah, you could make the argument it's better because now that we have access to so many more options, but you also can't really deny that it's come with its own set of challenges that some could reasonably argue are worse than its benefits, in the sense that many more people are struggling to get in any kind of relationship at all. Some people just have very unrealistic expectations. That's one, I think, commonality I've noticed. Just all things internet is, we've kind of just screwed up our expectations of everything. Even of like expectations of a good salary, a good, a good life, a good house, a good anything. It's all kind of skewed because of because of the internet. And the example I use, which is stupid, but it's the example that I think makes the most sense. Let's say, when we used to live in villages, people were known for their specific specialty within a village. And just for a stupid example, let's say I was the weightlifter in the village. I could squat, 500 pounds or something, whatever. You could replace this with anything. You could be the blacksmith. I'm just going to use a weightlifting example because it's funny. But, I was the only person in the village that could squat 500 pounds. So if you needed to, I don't know, if your horse fell over and you needed to tow whatever you'd need to do, I'm not even sure what, I haven't really put myself in the setting of this village much yet. But you couldn't, you have to travel hundreds of miles to find another 500-pound squatter in the village. Whereas now, if the moment you hit that 500-pound squat PR, I could Google it and find, I don't know, 5,000 people that also squat 500 pounds. And therefore you're like, oh, well, 500 pounds isn't that much. I need to squat more and more and more. And then we kind of just have a tendency to, it's just so easy to compare yourself. As much as you want to say, oh, don't do it. Don't compare yourself. Just be who you are and be better than you were yesterday. It's like, it's very easy to say that, but it's another thing to successfully accomplish that feat. And my only real strategy for successfully accomplishing that is to just stop using it. Just like stop using the technology. And on the internet. So it's like, I can't, as far as I'm concerned, I am the only 500-pound squatter because I can't even find them. And to me, that seems to be, there's not really I haven't found an elegant solution such that we can, retain that small village feel in terms of what we take pride in. The blacksmith takes pride in, making high quality whatever. And the 500-pound squatter takes pride in the fact that they are the resident person who does this, versus now it's all, we have all these armchair psychologists and everybody, it takes you 2 seconds to find 500 people who claim to have the right answer and everything. And it just gets overwhelming. And we've kind of just ruined our expectations of what people are capable of and should do. And, everyone now thinks that they, maybe it's just as greater of a sense of entitlement, but I don't think that's a generational thing. I think it's a technology thing, in the sense that the technology that has come with our generation has allowed us to be more entitled and without, we have plenty of evidence to back up, why, this, that, and the other. We can always, it's so easy to find somebody who's doing better, find somebody versus, being content is a big component of being happy and taking pride in something. So my real, you can kind of teach it like you would, I don't know, sex at a Christian school or something like that. It's just abstinence from the technology is what will allow you to take pride in something. Otherwise I'm not sure that there's a way you can guard yourself from, ruining things that you think you're good at or are interested in, only because it's so easy just to find somebody who's way better than you. And again, I understand that, it's possible for you to, what is this? This is strange. Sorry, this is super weird. I don't know why this is here. Whatever. Sorry, it totally got me off track there. It's just a random double chest full of stuff. It's it's easy to say that, oh, you just don't compare yourself to others, and just be happy for who you are. I think, but it's evolutionarily we're primed to compare ourselves to others, and to within a small social setting to try to outcompete the other. And maybe this is more prevalent in males or, I suppose people that are have testosterone running around. It's easy to say, hey, just give whatever, like stop being full of testosterone. It's like that's not an option. So it's like we have to. It's our biological impulse to to have some level of competition. And it's one just to ignore. I mean, ignoring biological impulses is hard in and of itself. It's like, so it's like try not eating for a week. Like, yeah, you could do it, but it's not. It is hard and it's not fun. It's not even really healthy to do that. But that's really what we're asking. I think if we say, oh, just quit being so competitive. It's like, isn't that we're kind of predisposed to do that? So it's not. That's not really a fair argument. Again, the only really solution I can come up with is just to stop using a lot of it and just to kind of, pretend like you're, you're living in a time before that. And something I also thought was super, super interesting. I've mentioned books I've read before, or I'm in the process of reading, but I just finished a book that I thought had a really, really interesting. There's a lot more I want to unpack with this book, but one in particular was the role of technology and machines. It kind of used machines and technology interchangeably, and I think for our purposes in this discussion, we can do the same. And what the author, the book was called Finite and Infinite Games. If you're wondering, I think the author's last name is Cease, Cease or something. I'd highly recommend it. It's a very, very difficult read, and not in the sense that it's, there are hard words in there or anything. It's just that every sentence and section is so dense with, it's very abstract, so it's very, very dense in the sense that it feels like every sentence is quite profound, or at least has the potential to be, if you really, break it apart. So it's not something you can just kind of read passively and kind of, without thinking about it, you can, blow through 20 pages. Each page is very, it takes a while to digest. It's like eating a stick of butter or, 3 pounds of steak. It's a lot of meat. It's not a very balanced diet book. And I think that was intentional. I don't think it was, a mistake. I think he was trying to be succinct in the way he read, and that resulted in a very, very dense book. Anyway, something he mentioned about machinery, or I suppose technology in that sense, is that it's designed almost to be to if done correctly, is to not even be present. In the sense that you think about like our car or which is technology, or airplanes or whatever. It's really meant to transport you without really traveling much at all. Because think about it, like I'm sitting in a chair right now at my house, and a car. I guess the technology we've designed it as such that it is as little different, is small of difference from the chair that I'm sitting in right now. Is the seat that I'm in, for the car. If I call an Uber, it's even more so because I don't even have to drive. And same with an airplane. I go sit in the waiting room, but I'm still sitting in a chair, kind of waiting. And the better that the technology is, in this case, I'll put better in quotes really. The faster this happens, and the less time I'm spending kind of in transit. So it's almost that the machines that work the best, the best technology in terms of transportation would be a teleportation device where there's no, it's invisible, so to speak, in the sense that you're not interacting, you're not really traveling, you're just snapping your fingers and you're from one thing to the next. And same with we think of our communication technology. So, our phones, our VR technology is meant to transcend the physical barriers, and even a lot of the, especially like text even, it's supposed to make communication, invisible, in the sense it would be no different than you, talking to them in person, which obviously we know that to be inaccurate. But the point that, a big push behind a lot of the VR technology is such to make it so immersive that it seems invisible. And there are a lot of issues with that. There was something that an analogy that he used, the author in this book, about the garden versus the machine. Like it's think about farmland or something. Machines that harvest crops are designed to make the process of harvesting as invisible as possible. The technology would be good if it made harvesting crops, easy. If I didn't even have to touch it, it was just a machine that did everything. And we can see a lot of analogy between that and really any technology. It's almost designed to make things so easy that it seems invisible. The best technologies is ones that feel invisible. And invisible might be the wrong word for some people, but that's the word that I'm going to use, and that's the word I'm sticking with. But anyway, same with, but the difference would be that it's not innately necessarily a good thing that it is invisible. The technology getting better is not always bad, but in the sense of a garden, and because we're not really living harmoniously with plants or the world if we're just trying to make the means at which we use them as invisible. Versus in a garden, it'd be one that you're trying to cultivate, right? You're trying to be kind of one with the plants, or whatever kind of hippie message you want to assign to the garden in this case. It is one that machinery is not welcomed. And if we think about what do we really want, in some sense, humans are really just after the conquering of nature. We kind of see, in some ways, you see nature as an enemy, in the sense that it's something to be conquered, right? We have to beat nature. We have to, use its resources. And the fact that we even think of it like that is, it's not really messed up, but it's certainly, oh, cool. It certainly is cause for discussion, right? The fact that we see really all nature as resources to be collected, right? Crops are to be harvested by us and eaten by us. Same as animals are meant to be grown and eaten by us, such that we have as little interaction with, the chicken that was raised and matured for our consumption as possible. And from a purely economic standpoint, there is no issue with that. That's what Milton Friedman or whoever Carnegie would have wanted. They wouldn't have wanted a society so efficient in consuming things that the product is so far removed from its process because of technology that we don't even think about what happens. We're so far removed from it. But I think there's some catharsis in having doing things maybe at on a small scale. There's catharsis in living on a small farm, so to speak, and growing your own crops, so to speak. There's a lot of technology that I don't think it shouldn't exist, I suppose, because it doesn't really make our lives any better. It maybe makes, things easier, but I think there's often good that comes out of, there's good struggle. I think everyone agrees with that in the sense that there are things that are good to struggle with. There is, adversity that is good and healthy. And a lot of times where we want to be so in control of everything, just as humans, I think, I'm speaking more broadly about just humans. We want to be so much in control that we, I don't know, we kind of lose the natural spontaneity that the universe often offers. And I suppose that's another more harder question to assess is there a quote unquote natural state of the universe? Because if you truly think there's not, then you might have this very, I guess, capture it mentality where we should just be conquering, plants and animals because we're the dominant species or whatever. I mean, it's a little strange to think of it that way, but there does appear to be a natural spontaneity with the universe in the sense that we've mechanized and we understand the process under which crops are grown, but we haven't necessarily matured that process to an extent that we know why things are the way they are. Like, we've identified certain laws and rules that the universe follows, but we're unable to change those laws in the sense that we've identified that gravity is a law that kind of controls things, but we're unable to control the gravitational constant. That's kind of a ridiculous example, but to me, that's what I feel like that's where we're trying to do on some levels, is always to control everything. And there's some peace in letting things be out of our control. So I don't know. I'm not sure if there's a natural order to the universe. I would like to think that there is, and we have some obligation not to disturb it. And it also, that sounds very, I don't know, like granola, brainwash sometimes. It's like, oh, think of the animals, bro, whatever. Like, and I get that. And there's certainly a functional aspect we can't lose and just all of a sudden start bowing down to sheep because, we have to look out for our own self-interest. Biologically, I think we're inclined to do so, but socially, we often, like I started at the beginning of this, we just innovate we just kind of innovate and then deal with whatever consequences come about later without really giving it too much extra thought because, what's the worst that can happen, right? But I think with the onset of newer technologies around AI and kind of the reproduction of, instead of automating trivial labor, we're now going to automate, I guess, not even really non-trivial, like mental effort, which is what we're supposed to be good at, but apparently not. So then, what are we good at? And if, the potential risk is the end of human civilization as it is, maybe that's what, maybe it's our own fault because, we think that we can just, move fast and break things without any consequences. I think that was a Zuckerberg's quote, or somebody's like, move fast and break things was his motto. But I think at some level we got to draw a line somewhere, and at some point we got to stop breaking things. Because I think it can become very dangerous. And I don't, maybe this is cynical, but I don't know. There's certainly a lot more to be said and to think about with that. But I'll stop there. Something I think is on a more optimistic note, maybe something more positive. Hang on a second, I'm going to take a drink of water. On a more positive note, I think to, not that I've discovered this, but I've better defined what I think really, I guess allows for more personal satisfaction. I've noticed that when I adopt this, scientific indifference to everything, which I often, it comes across on these videos, when I adopt this scientific indifference to everything, of course everything kind of seems pointless, and there's no, everything's fucked up, or there's no point to doing anything. And I think part of why we enjoy things so much as kids is because we experience things with a sense of wonder, right? We kind of always dream about what ifs, and this isn't the way it is, but who cares? Like, I can just kind of dream about this, and I think that's also why I play this stupid game, is because it kind of restores a little bit of wonder to my life, in the sense that I can do whatever the fuck I want. There's no, like, I don't have to worry about the economics of what I'm building, or whether it's, I'm going to get paid enough, or my boss likes me from what I'm building. There's no one, I'm playing Minecraft. I think that the sense of wonder, I think wonder is a word I'm after here. I think if I'm less miserable when I approach things with some kind of sense of wonder. Because when you're young, you're learning things, and things seem like extraordinary. And then as you continue to grow, you discover things that are not, you begin to find things that are less extraordinary. you're less easily impressed and you're more easily distraught or disheartened. And I think that's very normal, but to restore some peace or happiness, I think finding some sense of wonder in something is could be a very, very helpful component of being happier. Obviously, there's no cure to any of this unless you just want to take drugs, but that's always kind of a dumb, impractical solution. And as abstract as I say and I speak in these videos, I tend to be pretty practical when it comes down to it. I don't do things that are completely stupid because of these abstract, ideologies or whatever. I just, I tend to do the practical thing, and ultimately, I think if I had to boil it down to something, I'd say that the sense of wonder, approaching these with a sense of wonder, is something I think would be a very, very helpful direction for people who are happy, and myself included. So I think at times we should leave, you should leave scientific indifference, is the way I'll define it. Just leave that at the door, and I don't know. It's not because it's not as accurate as it might be. Maybe scientifically, like I'm not wrong in anything that I'm saying, so to speak. But it's not helpful to be overly scientific about everything and just kind of look at everything through this very objective, scientific, kind of cynical lens because you have to, right? I mean, there's ultimately not a way you can be somebody of true science and approach things with wonder. They are mutually exclusive almost by definition. So in trying to counteract this misery that comes with an unrelenting science, I try to find wonder in things, whatever that means to you. So I don't know. That's kind of my own advice that I hope to take for myself, but we'll see how good I am at taking that advice. I be willing to reason I'm not that good at it, but anyway, it is what it is. So this game is kind of my avenue to wonder. I think it kind of gives me this sense of like there's really no there's no innate evil. There's no real theoretical ending to the game. It can kind of go on forever as long as I keep playing. There's nothing I couldn't do in the game, really. I can kind of do anything, and there's no repercussions negative. There's not risking anything by playing the game. Of course, in the very practical sense, I'm risking my my time or whatever, like to do something else. But that's the whole point of this is not. If the point of your life is to be miserable, then by all means adopt a purely scientific indifferent attitude. But if you want to enjoy things, then I think experiencing wonder in one way or the other is a way to do that. So anyway, that's why I like this game. I think kind of that's what I'm kind of getting at here. Let me look at my list here. Yeah, something else that I just think, I'm not sure if this comes into fruition as a quote of sorts. I tend to quote things because it's, quotes are very, very helpful. They, the way I say it is a quote about quotes is that you can say a lot with a little. And that's kind of what I think quotes do, in the sense that, a few words can speak that's what like poems do really. But I think quotes are often more effective than poems. Poems you have to I think school just ruined poems for everybody. But quotes a lot of times are a lot easier to just, they're a lot more direct. But a quote that I probably didn't come up with this, but I came up with this, but I'm probably not the original thinker of this. But especially when thinking about money, I guess there was a day where I was pissed off about, price and value and whatnot. price in and of itself is arbitrary. Like I can, create any kind of product and select an arbitrary price. And economists would say, well, it's what people are willing to pay for it. Whatever. You can make arguments. But whatever. At the end of the day, it is an arbitrary price, and if you're able to convince people to pay it, that doesn't mean that it's worth that much. And along those same lines, value of that, whatever that product or thing or whatever it is, idea is also subjective, right? In the sense that, I think the game of Minecraft should cost $10,000 because I think it's that great of a game, whatever. And, but the market says it should only cost $40. I think it only costs like 27. But the point is that prices are arbitrary. They're picked out of thin air, and if someone's willing to pay them, then the product can continue to exist. And if people are not willing to pay it, then people won't buy it, and the product will not exist for that long. And the value of the product, which is different from the price, value is what people get out of it, is also totally arbitrary. Or I'm sorry, is subjective, I think is a better word. Arbitrary is better defining of the price. The value of that object or thing or product is subjective in the sense that an individual decides how much that product means to them. And there's no, that's not right. The value of that isn't right. Look, to me, the value of this is greater than the value of it might be to you. But again, that's not reflected in the price because it's not. It's just not reflected in the price. So it's also not. You can't use the price as a determinator of value. And I think people mistake that a lot as they, this, Bugatti, whatever, is $40,000. I'm not, whatever, whoever's stupid enough to buy that, go for it. But the value of that might be a lot to some people. And just because there's a price that is at a certain point, the value of it is objective. So if somebody is going to, get a bunch of value out of that Ferrari, they're going to get, or whatever the product is, then fine. I'm no one to judge. I'm not the arbiter of what value something is to somebody. So an example might be what is the price of water? We'll take that for example. The price of tap water in most places is pretty much nothing. I guess it's probably just fractions of a penny, or it's functionally free really if you mooch it off somebody or something. But really the economic value of water, unless it's some special water, is very, very cheap. And yet the price is selected arbitrarily. It's you can charge $10 for a bottle of water at a baseball game, right? Of course, most people that are well, $10, it's not worth $10. The price was arbitrary. Again, it's a fractions of a penny somewhere, and it's $10 here. But the value is subjective in the sense that if somebody gets to them what is $25 of value out of a $10 water at a baseball game or something, then it would it actually makes sense to buy the water, because to them they're getting to them, again, because I said value is subjective, they're subjectively getting a lot of value out of that $10 water. In the same way that your value of that water at that time might be different. And the setting in which value is determined is also important, because again, the difference between a hot day and if you're swimming or something, the value of water is going to be different at those times. And I think people are I don't think people should be running around judging what other people should value different products at. So for example, there are people that value Louis Vuitton bags as this thing's worth whatever, $5,000. Even if I had $5,000 billion, I would probably never buy that thing, because the subjective value to me is $8 or something, whatever it is. I'd rather just not have it than to have bought it for anything, really. I'd rather just not have it. It's I don't want it. But there are people that that thing is worth $7,000, and it's not up to me. And of course I can say, oh, you're an idiot. You think this Louis Vuitton bag is worth a bunch of money. I wouldn't pay a dime for that. That's fine, but like I said, the price is arbitrary. Again, we can talk about the price of the leather that creates the bag, but again, the leather, that's still arbitrary. It's based off of the market at that place, or the cows that produce whatever it is. That is arbitrary, and the value is also subjective, person to person. So don't judge somebody else for whatever they think is valuable. If some dipshit is out there drinking lemon water and they'll pay $100 for it every day, yeah, to you the value is like lemon water, so I don't know, 10 cents. But to them, they might get a lot more value out of it. So in some ways, I think people should just not care what other people are doing. And it's one thing if you're hired as a financial consultant for somebody and wondering why they're spending $20 on lemon water every day. But especially if it's unsolicited, like oh, this is not valuable to me, therefore it shouldn't be valuable to you. It's like, well, you're kind of missing the point there. None of these things have innate value, and price even further, but it's all, prices themselves are arbitrary and the value is subjective. So maybe the only thing that really has any inherent value is time, I suppose, just because I think we have a limited amount of time on the planet. So I think if anything were to have innate value, it would be time. But again, some people don't value that very differently. And some people use money to value their time, which I guess is one way to do it. But at the same time, even the price of money and the value of money are still subject to those same rules. So the price of money at any given time is arbitrary. It's determined by the Fed or the interest rates or whatever. It's really the agreement between people, right? And the value of that money is also subjective. The value of $10 to Jeff Bezos and the value of $10 to me is probably quite different. And it ends in saying that perhaps don't judge people for their the price they pay and the value they assign to certain things. So if somebody buys something that I think is stupid, I don't care. Like, it's not, the value is to their own discretion. And I guess the price themselves is arbitrary. Maybe I could have thought they could have gotten a better deal with the price at some later point or whatever. But again, if the value is that much of a factor, then, who cares? But maybe time is the only thing that has really any inherent value. And again, I'd love to hear a counter argument to that. Like, I suppose some people don't value their time, but that's not, again, the value they place is arbitrary. But if something were to have kind of inbuilt value, and I guess thus price, time would be the only thing. But I guess if we go deep enough, time itself is an artificial construct. And artificial is a tough word, but whatever. I can't go that deep into it without losing without losing too much semblance. But pretty deep thought that's related to that I don't really have much else to say on there. But a clock, people often just associate clock with time, like a clock is time. A clock really tells time, but what is time? A clock is but a metaphor for the passage of time. But time itself is technically just something that we've created, right? It's not, there's no, like, you can't really, it's like, it exists because we believe it to exist, in the same sense that we've defined gravity as something that exists, and we have belief and evidence that it exists. If gravity stopped working, we would, then no longer believe in it because it doesn't, we would say it doesn't exist. Same with time. If time, as we've defined it, stopped working, right? If a second was no longer a second, but an hour or 10 hours, then we would probably not believe in time for much longer. But I don't know. It's an interesting thought that we have artificially defined things. I suppose it's just a more practical level beyond all this. And while it's great to kind of discuss the greater abstract concepts of, life, society, time, clocks, whatever, gravity, there's a certain practical element that we have to adopt in all of this, in the sense that even going back to my price versus value conversation, and yeah, since while it's like, these things, price is arbitrary and value is subjective. There's a certain, we have to participate to some extent. And I suppose I'm generally the one that's hesitant about participating. And by participating, I just mean in, I suppose, the game that is life. I talked about the book that I read, and a lot of the games that people play in their, games is kind of a, I don't know, maybe insulting to some people, but way of putting it. But people that go to work to get promoted or get money or something, or I don't know, even I think having kids, I suppose, there's the other a game of biology by some extension, but regardless, there's some participation that society has that we kind of accept. There are conventions under which we converse. We talk in certain conventions that are strange if people violate them. One example that I think is funny is the show Curb Your Enthusiasm. I think it's wonderful, and it's interesting for people to watch only because Larry David, the protagonist, is really, his whole character arc is that he just kind of violates these otherwise accepted social contracts. When you begin to talk to somebody, you engage, you kind of, subliminally sign this social contract and saying, I'm going to, if there's a greeting, right, we're going to speak the same language. We're not going to, this isn't a physical thing. I'm not going to like fight you for no reason. There are just, kind of these social contracts that we kind of sign and engage in. And for most of the show, he just kind of violates these. He just asks questions that you're not really supposed to ask. He does things, and to some extent, I would think he's not even pushing it that hard. In the sense, there are many other things he could be doing, but chooses not to, only because, it would no longer be funny; it'd just be weird. But he does it in a way that I think is subtle, but is still telling of our adoption of social contracts. And I think it's one thing to just, we have to engage in social contact. I'm not saying the next person you should go talk to, you should, bark at like a dog, because it doesn't matter. I think just we should be wary of the impact that engaging in extensive social contracting can result in, and to realize that it is, but I guess just a game, if we're going to think of it in that way. But anyway, I'll move on to my next thing. But anyway, so a very, very fascinating topic. Something else I think we should adopt, maybe just as a society, should be the internet equivalent of a driver's license. So it'd be like a license to use technology, In certain movies that have a license to kill or a license to do whatever, I think there should be a certain baseline knowledge that people should have. And one thing would just be for their own personal security's sake. I think a password manager should be the equivalent of like parallel parking, in the sense that, we have to protect our digital footprint online. But the other thing being like, obviously just like security, but how to not click on, a phishing email or something. But I think even it's important to understand maybe even some of the underlying technology. So some of, HTTP protocols, like networking protocols, what it is. Because so many people think of the internet and use the internet as if it's this like magic, magic box. Ooh, magic box does this, magic box does that. And it's not. It is a product of our ingenuity to have created something like that. And by not understanding it, and it's not even just for their own safety. It's probably for their own well-being. So it's not, if we're going to use a car analogy, as a driver's license, because that might be the most apt solution, you should know, maybe the basics of what, an engine is and what brakes are. It's not to say that you have to be a mechanic. It'd certainly be helpful to be a mechanic, but you got to know what, like, the fundamentals of it. You gotta know what tires are. You should know how to change a tire, stuff like that. But we don't, especially for young kids, there's no litmus tests for using technology. And I think I think the worst people to have fallen victim to these things are old people that don't know any better, and they think it's, I don't even know what they even think it is, but they just use it in a foolish manner, and something that is a dangerous even way of using it. But yeah, I don't know. I think we should adopt some kind of digital driver's license that it would be nice to require people. I'm not even sure what the revoking process would be. What's the equivalent of a DUI? Maybe it'd be like hacking or something. But I don't know. I think it'd be funny, useful, cool to have to adopt a digital driver's license for people. So anyway, that's just another, I guess, shower thought or something I have. But yeah. So let's see. One other problem I think one thing with the future that I think I kind of want to. I wish I mentioned this in the conversation earlier about innovation, but the alignment problem is something that's brought up constantly by innovators who are worried about the future. Whatever. The alignment problem being at its core is just how do we align the interests of humans with the interests of technology? And really the zeroth argument with this is humans. We can't even align humans with we can't align humans with other humans. We haven't even mastered that yet. So it's like we haven't really accomplished the bare minimum when it comes to aligning things that are identical to us. We have cultures and societies that are still at war because they can't align themselves with one another, because of whatever reasons they have. Why does Russia and China and people like, what they have all these beefs, but they all just made them up. These things don't really exist, and these aren't laws that countries and things have to exist forever. In fact, they go in and out of style all the time. But why is it that we can't align even humans? So how do we expect to, as disjointed societies and cultures, align a potentially more powerful technology with our own interests? The answer is we're not going to until we. Again, I don't know. I don't have the answers, but I'd be most likely to say that we just would not properly align humans to the interests of, or technology to the interest of humans. It's a problem too difficult even for the most ingenious of us. And I suppose that's a cynical take. I think people have said that before about things previously. They said, oh, well, somebody smarter will figure it out at one point. We've said that about a lot of things, but eventually there will become a point where we can't just rely on human innovation to solve harder and harder and harder problems, right? Because as we advance, we create harder and harder problems objectively. Like, we don't even think about problems with food, but not in the sense that everybody's starving and can't eat. Like, we've kind of evolved from the fact that food is a real problem or shelter is a real problem. If we wanted to, everybody could have shelter and food. That wouldn't be that hard of a problem. In a very, very practical sense. Obviously, the logistics of getting food to everybody that's not a technology problem. That's a culture problem. So the reason that if we all lived in one single communist society, everybody could eat food. But there'd be other problems with that. But the technology is not what's limiting everyone getting food. That's just not the problem. It's a societal, cultural problem that's stopping us from all feeding one another. So anyway, but yeah, I think I'll wrap it up there. I tried to make up some ground on what I missed by deleting my world. So I've just been mining all this wood to try and make up some ground, but I still have a ways to go. But anyway, hope you enjoyed the episode. I will be back with more soon, and take care. Peace.